Kapil, I find that I borderline find it literally impossible not to prescriptionize everything you say just because of the distinct feeling I get whenever I read or listen to any of your work. Even though I know it's problematic at its fundamental nature, obviously, pretty much I prescriptionize anything anyway, but whenever I listen to you or read any of your work, to be honest, it's literally impossible. It's not impossible, I just, it's almost so automatic because of the distinct feeling I get. I don't even really have a direct question here, but is there just anything you can comment on this situation?
Well, you're not alone. I just don't. In some ways, how could it be otherwise? I mean, if your whole life, if your whole life you've said hello, how are you, and the other person has said hello, how are you, then if that's happened, 18 million times, um, how can how can you expect to be something besides hello, how are you, if that's all that you know? That's why like the truth is it's it's just a different it's a different universe, and like from the root to the top of the tree, everything is just like you have to learn a new language, you have to learn a new way of being. I mean, everything. So like people who think they can make a lateral move and they come to the truth, and they come to my work and they think, okay, well, now they're gonna come from where they have come, which is where everybody comes from naturally, not because it's their fault or anything, but it's just because that's all that exists is the prescriptive world. And like there's no like separation of prescriptive versus non-prescriptive world. Like that doesn't exist. There's only the prescriptive world. um and they come here and then they think, well, yeah, I understand what you said, and they didn't understand anything. I mean, they just read the words, or they consumed it in the same way that they consume everything else. And like how could they not? Like there's no sign that, like how could they not? Like how could this not just be something else for them, right? The next thing in line, the next. So if you've been taught to prescriptionize, and you've been encouraged to prescriptionize, and you've been conditioned to prescriptionize, and you've been trained to prescriptionize, like the thought of something not being prescriptive, it's not even a concept. It doesn't even exist. Like that's like saying, you breathe air, and you like, are you going to breathe air today, or are you going to choose to breathe something else? I mean, there's nothing like that question wouldn't even arise. And of course, you're going to breathe air. So it's the same thing here. Like it, it is not understood, and it'll never be understood because it's too much. Like that's why I blame nobody for that. It's too much, right? Like to come over here and say, okay, well now, and to be able to know that you have to, change your language and change your thinking and change your speech and change your word choice and change your shoes and change your hair. I mean, like no one would know that. No one would know that because this is this is just another thing in their long procession of things that they've come across. And um, they might find the word a little different, they might find the writing different, but how they process it is going to be like, no matter how opposite it is and no matter how different it is, their processing mechanism is intact. That's the processing mechanism through which they've lived since the day they first took breath. And that mechanism is by way of prescription. And so much so that it shouldn't even be said, right? There's no such thing as this is prescriptive, because like what else would it be? Like this is air. Like, but there's no option. There's no alternative. So when there's zero alternative, like it's a no-brainer, it's a given, it's a constant. there's no choice to bring up, so it would never even be brought up. So the where the person always begins is, okay, well, what kind of prescription is this?
But
Right? That's where everyone's going to begin. That's the level
but
at
but,
where everyone's
but
going to begin.
why do I have such a distinct feeling that I've never felt ever whenever I read or listen to your work? It does not seem the same as anything else, and it's a very distinct feeling that I cannot describe.
Well, I'm like, that's your own personal experience with it, and but what I'm saying is, that's what I was saying. Like, even though everything is going to seem different, everything seems different to you when you read my work, but the processing mechanism, what are you going to do with
Yeah,
that, right? You can only, okay, it's fine. It's different. Fine. I'm not saying it's good or whatever. Okay. Now, what are you going to do with it, right? And you can only do with it the mechanism that you brought with you, which is prescription.
yeah,
So you have to, like, what else are you gonna? Like I said, are you gonna ask yourself what element you're gonna breathe today, right? So that's why it's all about unconditioning, and that's why it's all about, or deconditioning. It's why it's all about unlearning and um, uh, removing the shackles, and understanding and recognizing that one's entire life is completely and utterly and totally shackled. Nothing is there of their own. Every word you speak, like the self-actualized guy, right? Like, every word you speak, you shouldn't even speak, right? Like a word shouldn't come out of your mouth. Like, obviously you have to use the and those are created mechanisms. So yes, that you cannot, invent a language. I get that. So you have to use that, the, and, but, is, not, it. But aside from the language, everything that you say and the order of the words that you put in to make a sentence, they're not your own. You're just a parrot, right? Not because you want to be or because you're wrong. Like, that's just what you know. That's conditioning. But the problem occurs is when one thinks that, no, no, I'm speaking these things and they're mine. Like, this is my own. This is not society's.
mm,
This didn't come from intellectualization. This didn't come from the 17 books that the influencer recommended. This didn't come from the bestseller list. This didn't come from the motivational speaker. This didn't come from the influencer. This didn't come from, like, that's where the disconnect is. I mean, like, it all came from there. Every bit of it. It all came from spirituality or intellectualism or scholarly, or like, it all it all came from that which exists in the world, obviously, right? Obviously. Well, I mean,
yeah,
where else is going to come from? Mars, right? That's where you live. You don't live on Mars. You live on the world, on Earth. So whatever's on Earth, that's what's going to come. Obviously, clearly, logically, Uh, so, like, so that's why you prescriptionize. I mean, like, you prescriptionize because what else would you do? Now, does it have to end there? Well, that's a very personal thing. Like, 'cause if one recognizes that, then, a fork is created in the road before him. And in recognizing, like, with the exception of like 77 people in the world, no one would even is ever, like I said, I had a very small footprint in the world, right? So I reach you know 26 people basically, right? So the like basically everyone is going to leave this earth, at the end of, we're all going to die, and never having even known about prescriptions, never having even known that they prescriptionize everything, and not even that, like, even below that, not even having known that prescriptions, what they have done to him and what they have not given him. And not that, once again, not that it's bad and they should stop. I don't really care about, it's up to you. But no one's even going to get to, like, level 0.00001, right? So if you've if at least you've gotten a peek of a peek of a peek behind the curtain, right, to know that you are prescriptionizing things, and even before that, more fundamental to that, that there is even such a thing as prescriptionizing. That prescriptions, there may be an actual alternative. I mean, that itself is like an earthquake, right? Well, even though it's infinite zeros with a one on the end. Um, uh, but like a fork in the road then occurs, and then through that recognition, then how one maneuvers is very personal, and there's no formula for
But
that.
but
But
when I identify the shackles, it seems so deep, Kapil. It's like 10 trillion layers of it. I look at my upbringing and I'm like, sorry to use language, but I feel like I've raped my mind, literally. And I just look at, to some degree, the past with so much dread. I just feel like there's 58 trillion layers of shackles that I can see, and at every peak I turn a corner, there's another shackle. And it's just,
yeah, so two things to say about that. Number one, that's why it's too much, right? And when I say it's too much, um, it doesn't mean it's too much, therefore you should stop. I mean,
I
I'm
will
not
not.
saying that. I'm saying it's too much in terms of it's too much to ask of someone. Not that I'm
Mm,
asking. I'm not asking, but it's too much. Nothing I call it. It's just too much,
yeah.
right? It isn't like a little bit of a
So
detour,
much,
and
so much.
it's like
Yeah,
everything, right? And so so that's one thing, and the other thing is, in making that statement, you realize that, like, how it simply cannot be prescriptions, because if it's 7 million layers, there's I mean, how many hammers and nails and wrenches and are there in existence to get through 7 million? There's not. You get through one layer,
yeah,
right? Maybe. Um, so and so that's why you see the futility of everything that exists in the world. It's all it because nothing can get through those 7 million layers. Nothing has a chance. It's all just like slingshots into a nuclear war,
yeah,
right? So at least you begin to get, if nothing else, at least you begin to get at least an inkling of just how anemic and irrelevant and comical, and tabloid-ish and superficial and cosmetic and really laughable. I mean, you got a glimpse of the war that's there. You got a glimpse of the nuclear biological war that's there in the form of 7 million layers of conditioning and shackles. And what's out there? Oh, well, try some mindfulness. You change your behavior. Maybe meditate for 20 minutes a day, or um, try to, like, it's a joke. And it's so much of a joke that it's an insult. That's what I've said many times. It's an insult to the gravity of what the shackles and the um, layers, the million layers of pain and conditioning and imprisonment are. It's an insult to those things. I mean, at the very least, acknowledge. I mean, that's like to tell someone to go off and meditate or do mindfulness or do whatever. Right? That's like the person's bleeding. That literally is like the person's leg is chopped off, and it's being held together by one patch of skin, right? His bone is cut off, his ligaments are cut, he's gushing blood everywhere, he's going to die at any minute. He's got one piece of skin which is keeping his leg attached. And then someone tells him, well, why are you being over dramatic? Like, why are you crying with so much pain? I mean, just shake it off. That's what that's what this is. But everyone thinks, oh, no, that's really weighty and like like significant advice to tell someone to go practice mindfulness,
yeah.
or the 3 Ds, or start a diary or gratitude. And not that Not that if one did those things through his own accord and whatever, but like it's so dismissive. It is so insulting. Like that's an insult to someone is have his leg chopped off when you tell him he's overreacting. I mean, that's an insult. It's not true, first of all, and it's an insult on top of it. I mean, there's a genuine problem there. He's not crying for no reason. I mean, obviously, this is serious, and the millions and layers that you're describing, that's like you're not like there's not some like you're being the scapegoat here. Every single human being is you. Every single one has the millions of layers. Like there's not like somebody who doesn't have. Everyone does. And so if that is the fact, and if that is the place that everyone is, and all they're looking for and all they're getting is some ointment and some moisturizing cream to put on their, broken off leg, um, that's that's the place where you are. Like not you, but that's where everyone is. That's the world.
Yeah.
The world cannot give you anything but moisturization
And bullshit.
or hand cream for for you got everyone's every human cancer and hemorrhage and impending death and legs cut off like these are I mean I mean it symbolically and figuratively but the pain is no less. I mean the suffering is no less. Every human being is deeply, deeply suffering, and in their own way. And and then you look into the world to okay, naturally you look into the world, with good intention. Okay, I need some help with my suffering. Oh well, just go you just put a patch on it, and then everyone, oh, that's a good advice. I mean, that's really, I mean, it's idiotic. It's I mean, if people realize the depth, number one, the depth, as you have just stated, if people realize the depths of the millions of layers of pain and conditioning and suffering that they've not only experienced, experience to say, well, you've experienced it, but now it's gone. No, like everyone is living under a mountain of rubble, bottom line, okay? Like right now, and tomorrow, and the next day, every minute of every day. And then every now and then they get a moment of happiness where they come up for a pocket of air and they go right back down into the suffering. So that's where everyone lives. So if that's the case, which it is, it doesn't matter what part of the world you are, like that's human. Then if that's the case, which is fine, that's fine. But then where do you go from there? Um, oh well, here's some moisturizing cream and stop over dramatizing it, and pick yourself up and don't worry and be happy and go talk it out with someone and go and like I said, I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things if you like if you need a pocket of air, you need a pocket of air. Everyone does. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do anything. I'm not whatever you want. I don't care. Meditate, mindfulness, to see psychotherapists. Like one must do what they must do to survive. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things. What I'm saying is that the seriousness of where human beings live, the seriousness of the suffering is matched by a joke in the world. It is not serious. It is not however serious that suffering is, which is, you know, 11 out of 10 for everybody, then the even a partial match for that, as far as in the form of help or in the form of a potential cure or anything that's anything serious, is non-existent. And that is what has to be realized by one who wishes to realize it. That's the world in which you live. And until that realization dawns, then the person is going to keep getting ointment and thinking that the ointment is like this really deep penetrating, solution to their wounds.
Thank